Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum. So to get started, just go ahead and create a new Flutter project, and after that install this 8 dependencies over here, libraries or packages. So after that, just do get pub and you should be good to go. All right, and right after this we need to come over here inside this lib folder. We'll create a new folder and we'll call it data. So let's go ahead and do that, data. And after inside this data folder, you're gonna go ahead and create a new folder and we'll call it repositories. All right, and inside this we are going to create a new file and we'll call it auth repository.dart. So this would be a Dart class. Since we are going to do network connection, so we are going to go ahead and create a class that would help us with talking with the network or the outside world. It could be cloud world, Firebase world, your own server, or anything else, but not your own phone. Okay, so now inside this I'm going to create the class and we'll call it auth repository. All right. Okay, now inside this, since we are going to talk with Firebase, we are going to use Firebase Auth to use Google login with Bloc together. So first we need to create a Firebase instance. So here, that's what we would do, Firebase Auth.instance. And now this, I think we need to go ahead and let's see if we can get it directly. No, it's not getting, and I believe I already got them. So here I have this Firebase Auth. So let's try it like this, instance. All right, and then after that, let's go ahead and save it in a variable and we'll call it Firebase Auth. And now let's see if we can import the library or not. Yes, we can. Okay, great. All right, so after this, because we are going to use our email and password to create an account, register an account, and then register the account in Firebase. So first over here inside this, we're gonna go ahead and create a method. The method name would be void, the type would be void, and we'll call it sign up. And over here we would need 2 things, okay, and they're required. We need the must. So over here we do string and email, so we'll have email ID, and then also we'll have required string password, okay, like that. All right, so we need these 2 things, and because this is a network operation, so our method should have async tag, and which should help us to avoid crash and things like that. So inside this we'll have try catch clause. Now inside the catch clause we want to catch errors, so over here we'll just throw an exception and we can just call exception, and inside this e.toString. So whatever is there, we convert it to string. All right, so now we have this method over here. So this is a registration method, right? Registration method. All right, so we already have the Firebase Auth instance, so we can go ahead and use that. Well, we'll use it a little later, but until that, we're gonna go ahead and use actually this one. So over here, we'll have this one, and then we'll do create user with email and password, as you can see. So we have email and password, we just pass it to it, and that's it. That's as simple as that one. All right, so now, well, over here actually we can tag more conditions, so we can weight the user, whether the user is able to create or register its account on its own. So what we could do over here, right after this, we can do on actually, and we check for it, that we see what happens. So now inside this on, so well, we can put a statement inside this. So here we do Firebase Auth exception, and we'll catch error if we have error or any logging, so we can catch them. Now over here we would check if e.code whatever the return state, if it's like weak password. Okay, so we can return that and tell the user that, hey, you have weak password. Okay, so here we could do throw exception, and then we could say this password is too weak. Yeah, that's all. All right, And then over here we can also do else if e.code equal email already in use. So if this is what we get from Firebase, all right, so here we would throw another exception. We would call it exception, and then over here the account already exists for that email, so you can't create a new one. All right, so yeah, so if this two I mean, well, either we can log in. If we can't really log in, we throw error. But if we have other unknown, so this would be for unknown errors, right? This would be for unknown errors. But what if we have known errors? So the known errors, like whether it's too weak the password, or the email already exists. So in that case, we're gonna throw this error, right? So this is the first thing we wanna send to Firebase, right? Okay, so once again, let me go through it. So we'll call this method from our UI. Now, of course, how we do that, we'll do it using BLoC. Okay, BLoC will trigger events, we know that. And from that event would get called, this will get called. And at the same time, in the event, we'll pass email and password. As we do that, this method would get called. Now, Firebase Auth is very powerful. It could do a lot of things. Firebase Auth.instance. You can create user with email and password. You can sign in with Google. You can sign in with credentials. You can sign in with Apple. You can sign in with Facebook. This is a very powerful API, and I love that. This is the reason. Okay, so anyway. So yeah, we check for minimum error and unknown error like that. Okay, so yeah, so this is our first, we created this repository class, and this is the first method. Wonderful. Now after this, we would come over here inside the slip folder, and we're gonna, well, actually even before we do anything else, let me come over here and actually start coding. And as we code, I'm gonna explain more over here. So I'm going to remove everything from here. We don't need any of this now. All right, and after that, actually, we're gonna remove this as well. Okay, all right. Now, inside this over here, we don't need this material app for now. Okay, so what I'm going to do over here, I'm going to go ahead and do a container. All right, container. Now, well, either we can keep that or wrap it around something called repository provider. Okay, so what I'm going to do over here, I'm going to cut this, and or actually I can wrap it around a widget. So for that reason over here, what I would do, I'm gonna go ahead and do like repository provider, right? This one. Now this repository provider comes from BLoC. Okay, so what it does, well, if you have network requests like the one we have, so you have to have this repository provider, and once you have, it will create a repository, which means that actually with this you can able to talk with the server from your app. Okay, so that's what it means. Okay, so we have to actually, the way I understand that, you have to wrap your code around this, and then you have to inject or create a repository. So this is the, this is the entry point, but you need to give it something. What do you want to give? You want to give it this class, actually, the class we created. So it has an entry point. So we're going to give it a class. Okay, what class? This class. Okay, so giving this class is called creating a repository. So to create a repository, you need a repository provider. That's as simple as that one. Okay. All right, so right after this, actually over here, we're gonna, well, now here it'll throw an error. It says create one. So this is what actually I was talking about, okay? So over here, we want to create the repository. Giving it whatever we have created. So that's called creating, and all we need to do, we need to pass the context to it. And after that, we'll just return like this, repository, auth repository, the one that we created. Okay, and with this, actually this would get injected inside, and we can load it and do stuffs like that. Okay, all right, so this is the first thing you want to do, and BLoC needs this repository, because BLoC needs to access this thing. access the methods from events like that. Okay, so that's why we create it first. You don't want to create a block first create this and connect block and this repository together. All right, now how to do that? Well, now for that reason, actually, we're going to wrap this around another widget, and this is where the magic happens. So here we'll call it block provider. Okay, so we need that one, block provider. Okay, right. Now block provider actually takes a block. What is a block? Block that connects events and states together. Okay, but now we don't have this thing in our case, so we need to go ahead and create this block and states. Event and states. So block provider needs actually a block, and block is created using events and states. One more time, block provider needs a block, and that block is created using event and states. So if you have block, you can trigger events. If you have block, you can get the states. So that's why we need to go ahead and create states. If we create those things, then we'll be able to create a block, and if we can create a block, we can get information flow from this auth repository. So that's the basic understanding, and hopefully it makes sense. All right, so now if you hover over on this, it would say go ahead and create things over here. So that's what we are going to do. So let's go ahead and create a block over here. Let's see, I tapped on this. Looks like it's not responding. Well, if it's not responding, the other way to go ahead with this. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see, cut this. Okay, now inside this, what I'm going to do, I'm going to do create. Okay, so over here, create, and once again, we need to pass the context, and then we'll create a block, and we'll call it auth block. But of course, it doesn't exist yet, so that's why it'll throw an error. Right? And right after this, actually, we can have a child, and this would be our material app, the one that we had early, and yeah, that's it. So as I explained, so repository provider needs to be loaded first, and the class we create, we need to use that one, and then after once that is done, that will have information, networking information, and then we create our block. To create a block, we use block provider. Now to create block, we need two things, state and events. Now we don't have any state and events, so we'll go ahead and create them and combine them. Combining them together, we'll create auth block. Okay, so yeah, this is the connection, and that's how it works. So now inside this, we'll come inside this lib folder, and then inside this, I'm going to create a new directory, and I'm going to call it block. All right, and inside this, I'm going to go ahead and create another directory. I'll call it block. And then inside this, I'm going to go ahead and create a file. So here we'll call it auth events, like that, event.dart, like this. So inside this, we'll create our events. And then over here, what are we going to do? We're going to go ahead and create another file. We'll call it authstate.dart, this too. Now, once we have this too, our error should be gone. So first we want to get rid of the error. So, and the last thing we have to do, you have to actually create a block for this. Otherwise, we'll still have error. So now let's go ahead and create a new class, and we'll call it block event. Block actually, or auth block. So we're gonna go ahead and call it auth block.dart. All right, great. Now inside this, we're gonna go ahead and create a class, and we'll call it auth block, and that extends our block, the block that we installed as a plugin, and it takes auth block. It takes auth events, event, and auth state. Okay, and that's it. All right. Now, of course, we need to import all these libraries. Go ahead and do that. And let's see, auth event. Okay, so if it doesn't get recognized, we could do like this. We would do auth event like this, and then over here do the same auth state. And let's see. So it says that you need to call super constructor. This two arrow should be gone once we actually create things, because right now we don't have any events, so that's why we get this error. So over here we'll go ahead and create a class, abstract class, and we'll call it auth event. Okay, now we use equitable to know whether two states are same. Like for example, if you have variable x value is 0, and you try to change it, but actually you didn't change it, it's still 0. And whether the state has been changed or not, using equitable, we can know it easily. It's not like getX that you can know it directly. So if you have your state objects and you want to know whether they have changed or not, you have to do that using equitable class. So it's a little bit different than getX. But anyway, so here we do override, and then here we'll have list of objects, because as in the auth events, we'll deal with some properties that needs to be changed or sending information through the auth event. And it might not make a lot of sense now, but as we talk, go ahead, it will do more. So props over here. Props means the properties, actually, the properties that you're going to use. So what properties we're going to use over here? So, well, we do have email and password. So these things need to be sent to this event class, auth event class, because events is triggered from UI. So from UI, you want to talk to the block and pass this information to this auth repository. How do you do that? You do it using this auth event class, okay? I mean, not exactly this one. So this is the abstract class. Actually, now we are going to go ahead and extend this class and create more class. So we'll create another new class and we'll call it sign in requested. Well, actually sign up requested. Sign up requested, because we want to sign up, right? So first we want to sign up, and then we do auth event like this. Now inside this, we'll have two fields, which is called string email, and then final string password. Now, as we have this, we have to have super constructor, constructor, sign up requested, and then this dot email and this dot password. All right. So now this is the class actually that gets triggered when you trigger an event. I mean, this gets called. As this gets called, the password and email would be sent. So what I'm trying to say is that when you have this UI, from UI, you're gonna trigger an event. So from UI, we'll type in our email and password, right? So this class would get called as we trigger an event. So we'd pass this email and password. So as we pass this email and password, we can grab them actually over here. So that's how you do that, okay? But yet we still need to work a little bit before we actually understand what's going on. Now, so that was for auth event. Now we'll go down and do the same for auth state. So now over here, we have to create another abstract class, and we'll call it abstract class, and auth state extends equitable. All right, now over here in this class, actually we are not going to do any states changes directly using properties. So that's why it's all empty. We don't have any, we don't have to have any, okay? So that's why it's empty. And this is what we need first. And then actually I can go ahead and create a class, and we'll call it loading. And it would do extends auth state. Auth state, all right, like this. And then well, let's see. Okay, well, it would want you to do this, override properties. Okay, now these things are all empty because we actually don't need any of this, not like event, because from our UI to the server, Firebase server, we'll talk through these events and we pass data. So that's why we have had these things over here. Now back to this, and now over here it says that make it, well, either I can import the library, or over here actually I can say part of auth block, okay, and that would solve the problem. Part of auth block dot dart. Well, if you have this one, actually this equitable, we don't need this anymore, and the error should be gone. Now we should do the same for auth state. Go to auth state and actually remove this. We don't need this, otherwise we'll still get error. So over here, part of auth block dot dart, and the error is gone. All right, so with this actually we are ready to work. Now let's come to our block over here. Now this error is completely gone from there. All right, now let's come to our main.dart over here, and we'll see that the errors we had earlier over here, they would be gone. So the first thing we should do, let's go ahead and import this. All right, now, okay, as I said that repositories get loaded first, and then we create a block. and the block needs to know about this repository, right? And how should it know? Actually, over here we can pass it. Remember, this is auth block class is a class, right? So this is a constructor that we are calling. So inside this, actually we can create a variable or properties, and we'll call it anything, repository. We'll call it repository. And now if you want to access the repositories, so over here you have to use repository provider .auth, and then you have to inject or mention the type, actually auth repository, and then simply pass the context. Now with this we'll still get error because our auth block class actually doesn't have a constructor. Yes, it does have a constructor, but it is not able to accept this argument, the one that we have passed. So we need to change this one. So over here inside this we do like this. So well, we'll mention it later. So inside this we do required this dot auth repository, but of course this variable doesn't exist yet, so we're gonna go ahead and create this class instance. So we do auth repository and auth repository. Yes, that's it. Now with this the error should be gone, but since we are over here, so we are extending block over here, so we also need to call this super constructor. And inside this we can, let's see if we can pass, well, we can't pass 0. Now if we can't pass 0, but actually we have to pass a state over here. Now this state gets initialized the very first time when block is created, and this state is searchable. You can search and find it. But now this state class that we created, this is used during the loading data from the server. Now we could go ahead and create a class, and we'll call it unauthenticated, and extends auth state. And inside this let's override the one that we had already. We don't need like this. We can just return empty properties. Props means properties, like the variables and things like that. Okay, now inside the block, actually right now we can go ahead and pass this one. So here, so we're gonna pass unauthenticated. So remember, this is a state. And once again, if you're coming from getX, you know that state means variables or classes and objects like that. So if you were in getX, most probably you just pass a value or map or a list. Okay, here instead of this, most of the time you would be passing classes like that. Okay, and after that over here we could do whatever we like. So inside the constructor body, actually states they get initialized. All right, so let's check it over here. We do have this, and okay, we're good with this. All right, so now if we come over here, the error should be all gone. So this is the basic architecture of our app. So first we'll have repository, and we'll create a repository, and we need to tell our block that, hey, we have a repository. That means you can use this one to talk to the outside world. And if you even get data, and for retrieving data using this auth block, you can also trigger events. And if you do trigger events, do the events over here. So that's the first basic thing. All right, now over here, what we could do, actually here first we can register an event. Okay, and if we do that, then we can work on our UI and call these events from our UI. So over here we would do sign up requested. Okay, and then inside this we'll pass our event and state. Actually our event would hold data. Now since this is a network request, one more time, so this would be async type. So we registered this on method over here, and it has a type. It takes event type. So this event actually refers to this one, this class over here. Now this event would also hold data. And what kind of data? Actually we also mentioned over here. So hey, this event can hold our email and password. So that means that we can go ahead and use them. But even before we use them, actually first we want to emit a state, and we'll call it loading, the one that we created. So that means that data is being loaded or sending, or actually it means we are working with the network, right? Now inside this we'll have try catch inside this we'll have try catch close, and then we do E, and then if we have error, actually we can grab them. Okay, so now anyway, so over here we could also do unauthenticated error like this. Okay, so we have two states when these events get triggered. First we'll tell the UI, okay, I'm doing something with the network, but if things go wrong when I do something with the network over here, this would get called. So these two states would get called, and we would be able to find them, whether it's loading or unauthenticated. If we can find, we can show users certain information. That's the point. So anyway, once this get called, we would load, and at the same time we'll pass data to server. All right, so how to pass the data? Over here we already have auth repository instance, so we can use this one. And then we know that inside this actually we have a method which is called sign up. So go ahead and do that, sign up, right? And all we need to do pass our email and password. But where is this coming from? This would be coming from our event. So we do event.email, and over here we do event.password. Yeah, that's as simple as that one. Now once again, since this is a network request, I'm gonna do over here await. All right, okay, great. So yeah, with this our basic setup is ready, and one more time we'll go ahead and now we'll go ahead and work on our UI, and once we work on UI it will make more sense because I'll walk you through it.